¿Qué tal, gente? Bienvenido de vuelta a Emprendementex. Antes de comenzar, por favor, sigan nuestro canal de YouTube. Estamos como Emprendementex. En Instagram estamos como Emprendementex. En TikTok estamos como Brian Rayita bajo Emprendementex. Sigan y compartan nuestro contenido. Y también sigan y compartan el contenido de nuestros patrocinadores que hacen esto posible. También sigan y compartan el contenido de la invitada del día de hoy, que es la mejor manera de nosotros apoyar a los emprendedores. La invitada del día de hoy habla español, pero vamos a hacer este podcast en inglés. Que este sería nuestro segundo podcast que hacemos en inglés. El primero que hicimos, irónicamente, fue con Brian de Winston Reed de Gamboa Bakery, y el segundo lo vamos a hacer con Brianna. También, qué casualidad, ¿no? Que también se llama Brianna Meighan. Mi hija se llama Brianna. Yo conozco a Brianna porque la hermana de ella era amiga mía en la universidad, Meighan. Así que, y conozco a Brianna porque Brianna también salía en televisión. Así que los que nacieron antes de 1990 probablemente se acuerdan de ella, que salía en tele. But before we start, I want you to tell us how you got here to Panama, because you are from the States. So what brought you down here, and why did you come to Panama?
Okay, first of all, thank you, Brian, for having me on the show. I've been a big fan of everything you're doing here for a long time. So to get started, I came to Panama in 2003. And it was spring break of my sophomore year of college. I came down on a business trip with my father. My father had been a real estate investor in Panama for a very long time. And he and his business partners were actually the second largest landowners in Bocas del Toro, in Isla Colón.
Wow.
Well, they were the largest landowners in Isla Colón and Bocas del Toro in those days. And so I came down with my father on a business trip just to kind of check out the properties, see how everything was doing, and meet with the partners and the law firm, that sort of thing. And I fell in love with Panama. It was my first trip here. I absolutely fell in love with it. And so
What did you like about it?
You know, we were here for Carnavales, and it was just so fun. It was so different from anything else I had ever seen before in Europe or anywhere else. And it was just so laid back. I mean, it was amazing. I just thought it was the coolest. I told my dad, I said, I really want to come here, and I want to do like a study abroad program. And one of my father's business partners said, well, you know, there's an FSU, Florida State University campus here in the city. And so maybe that could be an option for you. So we did our business trip, and on the second of the last day, my father's business partner said, hey, before you go back, you have to stop by our law firm, and we need to introduce you to our new legal team. And, oh, by the way, Brianna, you are going to love one of our attorneys. His name is John Hanna, and he's a surfer. He's blonde, blue eyes. You're going to fall in love. And I'm just thinking like, yeah, right. Okay. And so
that's how you met John.
That's how I met John. Yeah. It was literally like the first trip. And so we go into the business meeting, and I'm there with my father, and we're in the boardroom, and in comes this attorney, and it's John Hanna. And it was just like, boom, love at first sight for me. He also claims it was love at first sight for him, which is sweet. And so we have been together ever since then, since literally my first trip.
So like 20 years.
Over 20 years. Now we're going to be married. Let's see, in December of this year, we will have 20 years married. So we've been together 22 years, 23 years. Yeah, it's a long time. So anyways, and this is back in the days before we had WhatsApp or any type of
was
social
old school.
media. It was old school. So we were like emailing.
Cell phones you have to call on the cell phone.
Yeah, but that was like really,
and
that was
not a lot of people had them either.
Right. Nobody was making an international phone call to their boyfriend in Panama in those days. So we would like email each other. So after that trip to Panama, I went back to university. I finished out that semester, and I had already made arrangements with FSU to come down and
transfer.
to do, not quite to transfer. It was just going to be a 6-week summer program. It was like June and half of July. And so I convinced Meighan, who you mentioned as being your friend from university, to come with me. And I was like, I need a wingman. So I bring my sister Meighan down, and she's like, yeah, sure. Panama? Isn't that where Daddy has all of his property? I was like, yeah, don't worry. It'll be amazing. So we came down to Panama. We enrolled at FSU. We did a 6-week study abroad program, you could say. And basically we went surfing every weekend, and learned a little tiny bit of Spanish, made a ton of friends, and just fell in love with everything in Panama. So that's how I got here.
Okay, so you got here, and then you things get serious with John, and you start doing TV and modeling too, because I remember watching you from TV and modeling. Wait, it's like, hey, eso está congelado allá, Juanda.
Se acaba de internet.
Se fue.
Creo, porque
Dale, no importa. So you go into TV and modeling, which is probably people, they come to castings or whatever because you are blonde, and there's not no hay mucha gente blanca aquí en Panamá, gente. O sea, que there was a market for I guess, your type, and you started doing the real estate show at the time where Panama's real estate was just booming.
Exactly. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of context around that. So here I am. I'm a college student. My parents, of course, give me a little bit of spending money, and I had always been used to working little part-time jobs throughout high school and also a little bit in college, just to have a little extra spending money. And so when I got here, I wanted to do something to generate a little extra money for these little weekend trips, going surfing and whatnot. But obviously I was extremely limited. I had no options because I couldn't even speak Spanish. And it's not like the same as it is in the States, where you can have a traveler person kind of show up and get paid under the table and go work as like a mesera, in little restaurants at the beach or whatnot. And so I figured, you know what, if I'm a model, I don't have to talk. And so they can just take pictures and I don't have to speak, so the language barrier won't be an issue. And I remember one afternoon we did a girls' day out, and we were at this restaurant called Sante. And at that time, up above Restaurante Sante was Panama Talents owned by Raul Cubilla, and later became Wilhelmina Models. And so we were having our little sangria and our little afternoon, and my girlfriends go, there's a modeling agency upstairs. I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to be back in 1 second. I'm going to go do a casting. And so I ran upstairs. I introduced myself to Raul Cubilla, and he's still a very good friend of mine this day. He came to our wedding, everything. And I said, hi, I'm here. I'm here for about 6 weeks. I'd love to be a model, learn more about that. Do you do any of that? And so he said, let's do a casting right now. So I did the casting. Literally within about 2 days, I was booking jobs. So he had me, I was like on the front cover of Ellos magazine, and then Siete, and then all these other magazines. Then I landed the campaign for Felix. At some point I was doing Collins. We still had Mansión Dante in those days. I did all of that. I was doing just tons of campaigns, just commercial, print, TV commercial, all that sort of thing. And so, and I was making, good little pocket money in my idea of what that was in those days. So, that just led one thing to another. I was really comfortable in front of the cameras. And so basically, but after modeling, what happened is John and I decided, okay, I'm going to stay for another semester. My 6-week summer program is over. And I want to keep modeling. I want to keep dating this John Hanna guy who I really like. And my sister's like, well, I've got to go back. I'm going to go back. It's August. I need to go back and go to university. We both went to school in Virginia. And so she went back. I stayed in Panama. And then I continued to model. And then I was traveling throughout the region. It wasn't just local here to Panama. I was doing work in Colombia. I was doing work in Costa Rica. I was doing work in Dominican Republic. I was doing...
So you were getting booked
So I was doing big campaigns.
International modeling stuff.
Oh, absolutely. So I was even... I think the biggest campaign I did in those days was a Jordache campaign that came later. They even hired my horse. I remember I negotiated. I said, if you are going to hire me to be the face of Jordache for all of Latin America, all of the Caribbean. And this is like for every billboard, even down to the etiquetas, like the little tags on the pair of Jordache blue jeans had my face on it with my horse. So I remember a long time ago, there was a big building. It was like a 10-story building, and it had like my horse and I on the whole 10-story side, just this huge billboard. So anyways, so I decided to stay in Panama, and one semester, then continue to be another semester. So I did now my whole junior year here in Panama at FSU. And my university back in Virginia was like, okay, are you coming back for senior year? Are you going to graduate with our diploma? And I said, can I do it from here and still get it from there? And they're like, no. So at that point, John and I were engaged to be married. We'd been together for over a year. And I knew that my life and my future was going to be here in Panama. And so I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do when I come back? Because my Spanish in those days was pretty good, but it was a lot of like street Spanish. So it was pretty wonky. Okay. And it was not going to work in the professional world. And unfortunately, here in Panama, like a lot of people, for example, even if you're a college graduate, like university graduate, the base pay is not something that was really motivating me. So I knew I did not want to go out like job hunting after graduation. So John and I, right before I had to go back to university to start my senior year. So this is summer before my senior year of college. He and I went to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Okay. And we were there and I think we spent like 2 weeks there. We were there for a big conference and doing a little bit of surfing and just hanging out. And we came across this Cabo San Lucas real estate magazine. Okay. Just a free magazine that we picked up at like a coffee shop somewhere on our way heading to the beach. And this is something that exists all over the States. It exists pretty much everywhere in the world. And it just has, real estate and a whole bunch of listings and all the brokers and all the developers, and that's it. It's just like a massive classified magazine.
It's like a yellow pages of...
Literal, exactly. So John and I were looking at it in the car, parked at the beach, drinking our morning coffee, eating the bagels. And he's like, you know what? You should do this for Panama. And I was like, yeah, that's so true, because mind you, for John's business, because he had a law firm, and so his business was geared towards real estate, okay? And so foreigners, given that he also speaks English, and all of his clientele were the foreigners coming down looking to invest or relocate in Panama. And so he knew that the language barrier, and you know how it is for North Americans, Canadians, they don't even try to learn the language.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is hard, but it's not something, they're not going to educate themselves in another language and be comfortable making an investment that's not in their primary language. So I said, you know what? I should do this for Panama, where we put all of our own listings as well as my father's listings. And we can sell basically the advertisement. We'll make it super sustainable and it won't cost us anything. And it'll be a great platform for us to sell our own properties, because at that point, my father was looking to exit out of Panama and all the property he had in Bocas del Toro. And so Bocas del Toro was still, to give you context, really Panama had not hit its boom yet. It was simmering.
Okay.
This is 2003. So,
okay, yeah. So
Torrijos was president.
Okay.
Mireya had just come out. Torrijos was president. And, or 2004. And Panama was just starting to like crank up the momentum, but we weren't there yet. So I put together this magazine. John introduced me to his like really good friend, Patrick Casinghet, who's another surfer. You should totally have him on the show. He's awesome. And Patrick was a photographer and a graphic design artist and a surfer. So we would always hang out and surf, and we all had a lot of fun together. And so Patrick helped me do all the graphic design component. I said, can you make me like a mock-up of this magazine that, here from Cabo San Lucas, but we're going to do it for Panama. And I will start knocking on all the doors of all the real estate developers and see if anyone's interested in buying Pauta, basically. And so I created this little rate card. He helped me do the graphic design. And we would sell full pages, we would sell double pages, full pages, quarter pages, half pages, the whole thing, okay? And then, of course, we put our own listings in it kind of for free, and all their advertisements helped pay for that. Okay, so the idea was that I would do this magazine. I would distribute around Panama for free, that a foreigner, upon arriving in Panama, would find the magazine, usually in their hotel room or in the law firm or if they were in the hospital or just anywhere they could possibly go to. They would find a copy of the Panama Real Estate Magazine. They could flip through it. They would have all this information on like investor visas and can a foreigner own titled property? Yes. And the 3 different types of titled properties we offer here. I put all that information in there. So they were well informed, and they had a pretty good idea. Wow, Panama is actually a good option for making an investment. And so then if they saw a property or a project that interested them, they could go straight over to those people and say, hey, you know, Alta Maria people, what is this about? Or, you know, Nikki Corcione, what is this about? I'm interested. And these are all clients of mine from day one. So it started with the Panama Real Estate magazine. And when I first went I did a couple of meetings myself, but then it was time for me to go back to Virginia. And because my university said you have to go do your senior year here in Virginia on campus, you can't do it remotely if you want to graduate with our diploma. And I said, okay, here I am engaged. I've started a new business that I'm having to leave my fiance in Panama. I'm having to leave my new business in the hands of someone else. I had this really good girlfriend. She was also a surfer. Her name was Jess Madrid, also a model. And originally from San Diego, and she was like, I will take over sales. I will go knock door to door on all the developers, and I'll take care of it, Brianna. Don't worry. So she helped me with sales. She and I, again, this is before we had WhatsApp. It's before we had even Skype, okay? Obviously no Zoom. She and I would touch base in the morning via just email when I was back on campus in Virginia. And she would tell me like, here, you know, this is my schedule for the day. And these are the meetings. And at night she'd say, these are the meetings I went to. This is kind of like what everybody said. I made this many sales today, et cetera, et cetera. Brian, it took off like wildfire. Okay. We were closing so many deals. If a client had a question, they would just email me directly. Obviously, no one knew I was running this from my dorm room in college back in Virginia. They thought I was like some executive behind the curtain up in their office, and I was sending out my sales girl to go do these
and
meetings.
Was the magazine in English or in Spanish?
100% English.
In English.
100% English.
So they would write to you in English.
Yeah, so they would write to me in English. Exactly. Everybody would write to me in English. And I would just explain, but again, everybody's idea on who the owner, who was behind this magazine, was that this is some executive woman.
Wow. So this starts.
So this is like 2000.
So you were just ready for the slingshot that was about to happen here in Panama.
We were positioning ourselves, and we could feel
without knowing it, of course. But you were just ready. And miren, eso es lo que pasa, gente, y le pasó también a Zoom en su momento con Skype. Zoom había hecho una inversión y lo mismo con Amazon. Hacen estas inversiones para cuando el momento sea el ideal, ya tú estás listo. So you were ready, and you were at first row seats. That's
front row.
For when the show started. And then Martinelli comes into office. You get the canal expansion going. You get the metro. You get all these, you know, huge government investments that started happening here in Panama, Cinta Costeras, and, you know, all of it. And a lot of that came a lot of foreigners and a lot of foreign investment. We were growing double digits for like 3 years in a row. Which is just crazy. How, and you've seen, I guess, ups and downs of the real estate, but how frenetic was that era for real estate? Because you even had that TV show that I remember. So from the magazine, it went on to TV, right?
Exactly. So what happened is, we had created with the Panama Real Estate magazine, our first issue, Brian, had like 12 pages. Okay, that was issue number 1. Then 2 months later, we came out with issue number 2 and had like 64 pages.
Wow.
And then 64 pages. And mind you, this is like pauta heavy, okay? Like tiny amount of content, just like, you know, a couple pages, like here's a 2-page map in the middle of the magazine that shows the country of Panama. Okay, so somebody reading it can kind of orient themselves, right? That was in every single issue. Then we got a sponsor that was like a $5,000 sponsor just for the map to put their logo on it, okay? Then we decided, you know what, I'm gonna sell the front cover. Okay, so we had like, for example, Trump Ocean Club in those days, Roger Kafif's project, had the front cover. Then I had clients that were like, I want to go ahead and reserve the front cover because I've got projects that are in pre-construction and I want to make sure that they're on the front cover because we're going to these huge expos in the United States or in Europe, in Canada, and I want the front cover. So
how many magazines were you printing a month?
Okay, so we were every other month, and we would do 26,000 copies in every single run.
Wow.
Okay, so now let me tell you about that. But we had to be everywhere. Yes, it was extremely expensive, but I mean,
how much is expensive? How much money were you spending every 2 months?
On
printing.
Almost 20 years ago. We were printing in Colombia at the time. Then I think we switched it to Costa Rica because the printing quality was superior to ours here in Panama. And I can't remember the exact the exact numbers. I mean, it was expensive to print because it was a free magazine. And but the quality was amazing because we wanted to make it attractive so that it would catch someone's eye. They would actually walk over there instead of like using like newsprint, for example. That was just like gross and nobody would even want to like go look at it. No, we invested in quality so that people would be attracted to it, but also so that it would stand up, and it would stand up, you know, for example, for a tourist, extranjero coming here to hold the magazine, carry it with him, put it in the back pocket, go to, you know, his meeting with his attorney, go to the Tribunal Electoral to get his cedula picture taken, to go to all his little stops along the way during his visit to Panama, go to the brokers and all these different projects. We wanted it to hold up and not just like fall apart and disintegrate in the process. And then also, they would grab extra copies, put it in their suitcase, and then take them back to wherever they came from in the United States and Canada and Europe and show their friends, like, hey, guys, look at what's going on in Panama.
There's a gold mine down there. There's a gold mine.
You got to come. We need to do this trip. And I'm telling you this because this is exactly what our clients, the biggest developers, were telling us was happening. And they would say, Brianna, people come walking into our office with the magazine going, I want this. I want this. Exactly, Brian. So, no, it was like a feeding frenzy is what happened. So here we are. We've created, you know, this phenomenal magazine. Then, of course, we have the copycats come out, and then there's always people that have inferior quality, and they're trying to redo it, and it's like, nah, whatever. Let them do it. And then, you know, a lot of the other magazines were feeling like the big established Panamanian magazines that had nothing to do with real estate, but everyone was feeling their advertising budget was being pulled away from their magazines to go into Panama Real Estate Magazine, because Panama Real Estate Magazine was seen everywhere, and we were hitting up everybody. Okay, there was like no rock left unturned in those days. And so every meeting resulted in a yes and a closed sale. So of course, we had the other magazines were like, oh, they say they're doing 26,000 copies, so are we. And it's like, no, I would go into the meetings literally with my factura from the printer, just with like a few pertinent details like blacked out. And I'd go, this is the factura. You can see where I am ordering 26,000.
And this was a time where magazines were a thing.
It was the only thing.
It was the only thing. You would go into Arrocha, and then you would see like a wall full of magazines about anything or everything you could imagine. And the printing, the glossy paper, because printing and glossy paper and, you know, your newspaper is the difference between, you know, putting the magazine in your living room or using it to clean the dog pee. Exactly. So that's how things were measured at that time. And the things skyrocketed, but eventually that business had to, you know, start simmering down when the whole industry also started going down as well, right?
Exactly. Well, before we started simmering down, we were still going up, and we went up for a long time. So here we had with the Panama Real Estate Magazine that is now, you know, I think it was like almost 200 pages. Okay. And we literally would joke about how it was like a phone book. It was like a phone book. Okay. And it was just like pauta after just page after page after page. So here we have this basically like a Rolodex, a phenomenal relationship with the biggest developers, the biggest banks in Panama, because everybody was participating, and I was their point of contact. Yeah, because you had the banks,
you had the lawyers, and then you had the developers as well. And I guess maybe everybody. Probably construction
we had cars,
people,
whatever. We had everything. So because it was basically even mueblerias. So anything that like a foreigner would need to get set up in their new life in Panama. And so we put that in, and it was a perfectly curated guide for that foreigner. So then what happened is one day it was Altos de Maria. They came to me and they said, Brianna, we are going to go to an expo. I think it was Panama Living, this huge conference. And they said, we need somebody to be on our video who speaks English. Can you come do the English from Altos de Maria? And I don't know, do you know anybody who's like a photographer, who does TV, anything like that? And I'm like, yeah, I've got a guy, Patrick, who's my graphic design artist. He's the guy. And so they're like, could you maybe help us make a video of our real estate project? And so I said, yeah, sure, no problem. Let me get you a quote. And so I went back to the office. I talked to Patrick. I said, okay, what can we do for these people? Like basically it has to be like, I'm going to have to write the whole script. I'm going to have to be in it, you know, come out talking on it. And I'm going to need you to run around and film all the tomas. Okay. Perfect. So, got back, said, yep, we can do this. We want to make it really, really amazing for you. So we're going to need 2 days and this is the price. Okay, great. So we closed that deal, went to Alta Maria, filmed. It was amazing. It was like filming like the sun up, the sun down, the golden frog, you know, me jumping into a waterfall, like, and then talking and doing the whole guided tour around Alta Maria. So then that was what we called a Panama Real Estate Productions. Okay. For short, we called it a pre-pro. Okay, so now I was going into my magazine real estate meeting, my meetings with my clients, my developers, and I had now 2 products. I can offer you the Panama Real Estate magazine, the Pauta, or I can offer you a video, a Panama Real Estate production, like a video, and I can be the person in the video. Brian, we did everybody's video. Everybody said yes. Okay, they were like, actually, yes. And I do have a conference coming up or an expo coming up or whatever it was. And we need something in English. Can you do that? I said, yes, of course. So now we are doing everybody's.
And this was just for internal use for the companies at that time.
Exactly. It could be like
because if they have a show at an expo or whatever, they needed to have something on TV and, you know, explaining what.
Exactly. So imagine like, you know, you go to like Expo Kapak, okay? Or whatever foreign version of a real estate show. And they have like, you know, their whole stand set up, and then they have their TV, their big screen TV on like a loop, and they would have this like going, okay? Or somebody would need a packet of information and they would receive the DVD. That would give them more information, like a full tour, okay? Because remember, we didn't have social media.
Yeah,
okay,
there was no
we really
YouTube.
didn't have YouTube. We did not have YouTube.
Yeah.
So, and to put this on a website was extremely heavy, and the websites, you know, it would be like loading. So we were producing. We actually bought the machine to burn, I don't know, all the thousands of copies, and then to make the graphics, the art, and then we had like the actual box which we would put their logo on. No, we were doing the whole thing, and we're doing this for every project. It was so wild because, I mean, all the developers all told me this. They said, for example, they would all go to the same expos, like in the States, and they would do okay, next up is our Panama, kind of our Panama.
And you were
special.
All over.
And it would be like, Brianna 3 projects in Costa del Este, Brianna 3 projects in Punta Pacifica, Brianna 3 projects in Rio Mar, in the beach or wherever. Brianna,
you were the face of
and then it was just like, just Brianna. And people were laughing because it was
the
like,
face of real estate.
Just all over the place. Like Brianna's going to all these things. So yeah, that's how that started. Well, then I get a call back I'm going to explain how we got into TV. So then I get a call back from one of the clients, probably Alta Maria, and they were like, hey, we need you to edit that long video that you made for us. Can you edit it into a 30-second thing? Because we're going to put it on TV. We bought a little airtime. We're going to try a little television. So I call up Patrick, and I'm like, Patrick, can we edit this? You know, I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll get you a quote. Okay, so we edit. We give it back to the client, and they put it on TV. And then, of course, everybody sees me in the video, so they think I did this. They didn't realize that the video, the actual client, Alta Maria, did the video and bought the airtime and whatnot. So then they start calling me and they go, Brianna, we actually need you to edit and put us on TV too. So now we're editing everything we've already filmed into this tiny little capsule, okay? And they're like, oh, and can you buy the airtime also? And I'm like, okay, yeah, let me call Medcom, get a quote, and I'll send you the quote, okay? So then I'm buying so much airtime, I realize, why don't I just compile all of these clients that I have in the magazine that and just create a show. Exactly. And I'll be the host, and I'll come out and do a little welcome thing and say, we're going here next, we're going there next, and give a little bit of information, a little bit of insights.
And it was
tips.
Already a lot of it was already filmed.
A lot of it was already filmed. We had this entire library of footage that was, it was incredible. So, so that's what happened. And I created basically it was Hot Properties. And so we came out with Hot Properties the end of 2004, and everybody saw it. So what I did was, one other thing, I had to buy airtime on cable TV. In those days, there was like I think it was called TV, like Nacional. And then there was cable TV.
Mm-hmm.
And since I was a foreigner and I wasn't naturalized citizen, so I didn't have my licencia de locutora
Mm-hmm.
yet, I could not talk on national television. So I could not go to like Channel 4 or TVN,
Mm-hmm.
Channel 2 in those days. I was limited to Mall TV. But I decided, you know what? Let's not see that as a limitation. Let's see that as a huge plus for us. Mall TV, you do rotativo, and that's how it works. They're like, yes, we can do 6 times per day. I said, perfect.
Yeah.
My clients, the more impressions, the better. That's what we want. So they were putting our show on. They basically said 6 times per day. It was like 600 times
Oh yeah,
per day.
I remember watching you.
We were spammed with the hot properties
Yeah.
and Brianna and real estate.
You were Mall TV. Like, I mean, I was probably a little younger than you were, but all I saw on that TV channel was you.
Yeah, it was really something. I remember in those days, again, this is before we had social media or we were really staring at our phones. I would go into, what was it, the gym. Power Club gym, and all the TVs in front of the treadmills. It was just like all hot properties, and everything was on Mall TV. And so here it is, it's in all the hotel rooms. It's all over the entire country because every hotel has cable TV, and it's the only thing about Panama in English. So when a foreigner came to Panama and they're laying on their bed in their hotel room and they're just, clicking through channel surfing, going Spanish. Ooh, something in English. Ooh, wow, real estate. That's what I'm here for. Let's pause. Let's listen. It was extremely effective, very powerful. So
if we go back, you had billboards, you had TV, you have radio, and you had the magazines. That was about it for doing any sort of marketing or advertisement. And social media came and changed the whole thing. But Panama went through all these bonanza, extravagant sales and in real estate. Eventually all of that starts just, I guess, simmering down, if you want to say it that way. But what did you do afterwards, and how did you foresee that this sales were starting I guess the magazine started to get smaller, and you thought, okay, when's the time to leave this or to exit? Because a lot of people like to stick around, and then they just start pushing the wagon more than it should have been, instead of just jumping out, and they end up, some of them bankrupt a lot, because they start spending money when they shouldn't have. So when did you see that you had to exit this business?
Exactly. So basically up until, let's see, it was about 2008 with the financial crisis in the US is where we here in Panama really felt the reverberations of that echo in the financial investment world. So obviously when in 2008, 2009, there were Lehman Brothers came down, a lot of huge investment firms went under, and there were bailouts and other banks went under. Obviously Panama received that in the form of people, contracting. And so the market really started going down then. Yes, we felt it. I would walk into meetings, or at that time I had other salespeople working for me. I wasn't really going into meetings anymore. And, but I would hear about it at the end of the day, like, how'd it go? How are we doing on sales? And they're going, yeah, people just want to wait. They are going to see what happens. And that became the tone. And then I even tried to get out there and see, like, okay, maybe these people, not everybody is cut out for sales. Maybe it's a personality issue. Let me go into the meetings and see what I can do. And then I would have the one-on-one talks with the big developers, with the banks, et cetera. And they go, Brianna, we just need to we're not going to advertise, or we're not going to renew. We just need to see where things are going. We're having to cut back on our budgets because we're feeling it in other areas, et cetera, et cetera. So it was obviously nothing personal about any of the products or any of the services we were offering. It was just the way the market was starting to
It was just business.
It was just business.
You would have done the same, probably.
Exactly. No, absolutely. And there's times where you need to cut back and you need to just go, oh, let's wait. So it makes perfect sense. Anyways, so this is like 2008, 2009. So then I changed my TV show. The magazine no longer existed just because I could not even keep up with it. And really people were no longer asking for the magazine within a couple of years, even before the slowdown in real estate started happening. People were so into the television, and we were kind of that was where our real bread and butter was in television. And so, but mind you, also before all of that, we got picked up by Entertainment Television, our TV show.
The
Hot Properties.
Properties?
Yeah, so we were now, before the end here in Panama, we were now worldwide. Okay, we were in 27 countries.
But what properties?
Okay, so we had...
It couldn't be only Panama.
No, it wasn't.
So you were doing what, properties all over?
Yeah, so we were then... It was kind of like a precursor to Cribs on MTV.
Okay.
So we would go into... we were doing shows in Miami. We were in like Aspen.
All new houses and properties, or?
It was, a lot of new ones, but also not new. So for example, we were invited to Mar-a-Lago. To Donald Trump's house. I had the full tour. Even
how was that?
It was extraordinary.
How big is that house?
Oh my gosh, Brian, it's massive.
What's massive?
It's not a house. It is
like a palace?
Living in. Oh, it's like a palace. It really is like a palace. So we were in, for example, Ivanka Trump's bedroom, and her bed, and like I remember in her bathroom, everything is gilded. Okay, I'm talking like Rococo, gilded, like Louis XIV or something. It's like Versailles. Okay. Yeah. And they didn't just take us into like, well, here's the ballroom and here's the main entrance. All right, peace out.
You got to see the toilet.
We got to see the toilet. I stood next to the toilet. Ivanka Trump's scale. She had this scale that was like to weigh yourself, but it was gilded. Okay, it was literally like something you would see in Versailles. I'm not even kidding. It still cracks me up to this day. Same thing. We were like at the Versace mansion in Miami Beach, and like off camera, off air, we're like laying on the bed, and the bed, Brian, because
I've been there. Now it's like a restaurant.
Okay, now it's like a club. It's a private club.
Yeah.
So the bed was like a 10-person bed, Brian.
Wow. Yeah, he got around.
Lots of things going on. And the bathroom, we all got in the shower.
It was a big shower too.
The shower had like 14 shower heads.
Jesus.
So yeah, there was a lot of partying, at that house, I'm sure. Then we did like Mariah Carey's ski chalet in Aspen.
Okay.
It went on and on. And so we were doing
How many
more.
years? How long was that?
We did that, I think, maybe 2.5 years. I think we were on E.
Wow.
And then we were also able, one of our deals with Entertainment, the network, was that we could include like a certain amount of airtime. I want to say it was like 3 minutes they gave us that we could include our own clients and our best of properties to promote Panama. And so that was like its own product, was being able to be featured on that program. Okay. So there was like the multi-V edit, and then there was the Entertainment.
Who got you, or the E just called you one time?
So I reached out to E.
Oh, you reached out.
Yeah, I reached out to E, and I sent them, I said, is this something, because our quality was impeccable.
Yeah.
It was really incredible. And they said, we have a review and we'll look at it. And so I went and I met with them.
How did you send it? Because
I went
online, or you said like a tape?
No,
it
was a DVD.
It was, and this was 2008-ish?
This would have been about 8 or 9. Probably 8 or 9. So, because I had my first son, William was born in 2012. And at that point I stepped away from TV because I wanted to go all in being a mother. So we were doing E for a couple of years. We did that. It was still, again, very, very intense. It was all travel. We were going to all these places. It was amazing. And then we still had the Panama stuff, but then it started all kind of coming down. And it was just global. Panama really felt the effects of the
because
downturn.
It just went up really fast, and then...
Exactly. And so, but really the catalyst that caused that change was the 2008, 2009 U.S. changes, just the financial crisis. And like when Lehman Brothers came over and the other big banks and then the huge bailout, everybody really took a big step back. So, no, it makes sense. It wasn't just to Panama. It was, the whole world was kind of taking a pause. So then I changed my TV show, all TV. Everything was changed. And I decided, you know what? I'll try something else for just a little while. I love TV. This is what I've been doing forever. So I had another show that was more lifestyle, also on E and also on Mall TV. It was called Etc. TV. It was very just lifestyle. So we would do a lot of fashion, but we would also do real estate. And then I did that right up until 2012. So I was 29 years old, and I started thinking, I want to have a family. And I don't know how long this might take to explore, to try to do that. Could take some time. And I already knew, Brian, that once I were to get pregnant, I did not want to be on TV anymore. I wanted to be 100% all in, like just chilling.
Because you had to be traveling all the time. You can't do that with a kid.
No.
With a
baby.
baby.
Or even pregnant.
Yeah.
So,
no way.
And not at that level. And again, I was the executive producer of everything.
Yeah.
So
you were hands-on all the time.
I was hands-on everything. I could delegate as much as I could, but I was always the one who was going over and doing a lot of work. So, so I ended up getting pregnant immediately, like right away. And so I said, you know what? TV's been fun. I will come back again to TV when the time is right. But I'm now going to embark in this new chapter, which is motherhood. And so I just took a little break, basically. I had both my sons they're 2 years apart, or 2 years and a little change apart. And during that time, I just relaxed. I was just at home. I was doing real estate just right there in Embassy Club over in Clayton, where I lived at the time. And I was doing really well with real estate, actually, without even trying. Basically, since everybody knew me from real estate and from Hot Properties, anytime I'd walk out my door to go to walk my son to the park in the afternoon, all my neighbors were like, hey, Brianna, we want to sell our house, or we want to sell our garden apartment. Can you come list it?
They thought you were a real estate broker.
They thought I was a real estate broker. And see, John, and we've had that side of the business. But it was never my thing. But they all assumed that I'm selling these properties that I'm talking about on TV. And it wasn't really the case. I was just the TV host, the presenter of them. So but I've always been kind of like, well, it's not rocket science. I can figure that out. Sure, I'll come over and see your house and list it. And John is a broker, so he can actually do the deal. And I was closing like 6 figures a year in real estate deals right there in Embassy Club in my neighborhood. And just without even really trying, just going from my house to the parque in the afternoon with my sons.
But you had, because Brianna makes it sound like it's very easy, but it takes 10 years to see overnight success. So all these, young cats that want to, I can do this, going to the park. No, you can't, because you had to have 10 years on TV and you had to have a magazine also. And you were like a reference person as to the real estate here in Panama, when now there's a lot of people doing the luxury real estate and doing the content and anything. But I want to say you were like the pioneer on doing this, because we didn't have that on TV, and the business has changed a lot. Social media has just been so innovative in the way of people selling properties now, but it gets to a point where you start feeling a little itch that you want to do something else too, because now you're feeling the burden of being the person that if you are not there, the business is not growing. So you were running the business, but you were not building the business, and the business was you. So if you got a sick day, you didn't sell property because you were sick. So what happened next? Because now we have all these wonderful products in front of me, because I knew you were doing this, but how did you get from selling properties and now you're doing this?
Okay, so I took my little maternity leave. And again, we were talking off air earlier, Brian, that I love to work. I can't sit still. For me, it's not even about the money. I mean, I won't do it for free, but I genuinely love working. I love the thrill of building and creating. And so even though I was doing real estate, just walking every afternoon to the park with my kids and closing deals that way, I came in one day and I told my husband, I said, you know what, John, I want to come up with a business idea. I want to come up with a product where I'm not the product. I don't have to be the face of it. So for exactly all the reasons you just explained, if I'm not showing up and holding the microphone in front of the camera, I'm not getting paid. If I'm not the model who's there on set in front of the cameras and lights, I'm not getting paid. And same thing with being a real estate broker. Yes, you can make a lot of money. I was doing 6 figures relatively without, not to say without trying, but kind of without trying. And that is a lot of money. But if I get sick, like you said, I don't go to work or I take a 2-week vacation, I don't get paid.
Yeah.
And so I said, John, I want to create something where I don't have to be the face of it and I don't have to be the product. I want to create a product that I can scale to the moon and back. And then I start going off into this whole tangent on my wish list. Okay. And my husband's listening to me. I go, something I can scale to the moon and back, something that's not dependent on Panama's jurisdiction, because what I had lived from the magazine and the TV show is that Panama, I can make this huge investment and be this, let's say, a big fish in a small sea here in Panama. But then if I try to go anywhere else, I'm nobody. Okay. And so if something happens to Panama, then I'm extremely exposed. And the risk is very high in terms of everything I've already developed and the brand equity that I've built in one.
You needed to diversify. Diversification.
I needed to diversify, exactly. So, and that's exactly what I did. I said, also, going back to everything that I had learned from my days of doing the Panama Real Estate Magazine Hot Properties, I didn't want an office. I said, I don't want an office. I don't want rent. I don't want to have to pay the light bill. I don't want to have muebles. I don't want to have anything. I don't want to have this crazy, outrageous overhead.
You already lived that.
I've already lived that. I've already seen that movie, been down that road, and I'm done doing that. And so I said, I also don't want any people. I don't want any sales staff. I want to be able to run this completely from the independence of my iPhone, my laptop, from anywhere in the world. And the list kept going on. And my husband is literally like there, like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure, baby. Keep dreaming sounds amazing. He's just, I'm like, don't worry, it's out there. I just have to find it. So he's like, okay, sure, keep dreaming, babe. So John Hanna, for anyone who knows him, he's very down to earth. And so my little dream idea was far from being down to earth. So then it was like as if the universe was listening, and it was from my lips to God's ears in that very moment, because it was like, the way I remember, it was like days later, Brian. I've always been a runner. And so I go running in the morning. I did my run. I came in. I'm having my breakfast one morning. And I pop up in my laptop and I'm on Facebook. And this ad pops up. And it's like a video ad on Facebook while I'm eating breakfast. And it's like, do you want to learn how to create your own brand? Sell from anywhere in the world, from the convenience of your laptop, never from an office, no stores, no bricks and mortar. You don't even need a staff. And it's going on and on. It's like, learn how to sell from Amazon.com. And don't worry about needing a bodega or a deposito. Like, we will do your third-party logistics for you through our FBA. Okay, so fulfillment by Amazon. And it's like, do you want to learn? Click here to learn today. So I clicked there.
Those were like the baby steps of the FBA at that time, right?
This was generation 2. This was like they had betaed the program the year before. Okay. And this is the second year of FBA. Okay, so I was brand new. There was only one generation before me of sellers, 1 year older. And so I clicked yes to participate in the free webinar to learn how to sell and create my brand and do this Amazon FBA thing. And I watched the 90-minute webinar. Brian, I fell in love with it. I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm not going to need an office. I'm not going to need,
logistics. They do everything for me.
Everything. They do A to Z. All you do is literally create your brand and have them send it to Amazon FBA, which is their network of warehouses. And then their people at Amazon will pick and pack. They'll keep it on the shelves there. They will wait for the order to come in through the Amazon catalog, and then they will pick and pack and they will put it in their little Amazon box, and then off it goes. Okay. So the course, of course, it was a course, and it was $5,000. And I was like, oh, I'm going to totally do this course. They will teach me everything, and I'll be up and selling on Amazon before we know it. Then I decided I'm not going to do the course. What I want to do is I'm going to self-teach myself everything instead, because now YouTube at that point is huge and has a wealth of knowledge, and podcasts and people doing online coaching was just emerging. And so there was already a lot of content out there. This was like a hot, very niche, but very hot subject. And so I was like, I prefer to actually go the harder route and teach and learn and do the investigative work, so that I know I personally am not suffering from like bright, shiny object syndrome. And I'm really passionate about this subject matter, so that I stick with it. And it's not just like another course I took and shelved the information, put it off to the side and never really carry through with it. So I was like, let me see, if I make myself go through this process, I will prove to myself that I'm really into it. Okay, so within the course, and whether you did the course or you self-taught in my case, there was like a top 10 list, that the criteria of what a good product would have, okay? And the first thing they say is, whatever you do not try to create a product that is something you put on your body, like a topical, or something that you ingest, like a vitamin supplement or a food.
Why?
Because it's extremely high risk. Okay.
High
if
risk.
Somebody has like a bad adverse reaction or chokes, heaven forbid, on the thing, et cetera, et cetera. It's very high risk. Plus, there's so much red tape with getting into something you're going to put on your body. It can be absorbed, et cetera. So the fact that there was a warning label there, I'm like, dude, I'm going all into the do not enter area. Okay, we're going to do supplements. But I'm also like kind of fast forwarding here, because there was about a year long, or not quite a year, it was about 6 months, where I did research and I was looking at a bunch of different things. And, seeing if this is the product I want to do ultimately. Now, I have to preface all of this with another personal issue I was going through in my life at the time. So from about the last year and a half of doing TV and modeling, all through my pregnancy and then up to that point in time, I was suffering with this is so embarrassing, but I had this rash on my face, okay? And it was eczema. And we could not figure out what it was. I mean, I went to the best dermatologists here in Miami and Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, everywhere. Everyone, they did, chemical peels, injections and lasers and this and antibiotics, you name it. I tried. I threw out all my cosmetics and got new cosmetics. We didn't know what it was, where it came from. My sister, she would come down. She was living in New York City at the time. And she would come down to Panama. She goes, oh my gosh, what is that butt rash on your face?
Oh, God.
I mean, it was dreadful. And when your face is your product, and you walk in and you've got makeup artists and they're like, hey, Brianna, what are we going to do with you? How do we get there? And I'm like, it was awful, Brian. So we could not figure out what this rash was. We knew it was eczema, but we couldn't figure out how to make it go away. So about the same time that I had developed this product, or I was looking for the right product to sell on Amazon, I went to a doctor and she goes, oh, Brianna, you need to do a gluten elimination test. And I'm like, gluten? Like, this is not really even a conversation yet, gluten, okay? Like, you'd heard about it, but it was not like a thing people were really into. So she goes, you need to eliminate gluten for 15 days and then see if your skin clears up, okay? So I'm like, I've tried everything. I'll do it.
What else can I lose?
Exactly. Like, whatever you say, I'll do it. So I go home. I buy all this gluten-free food, which tasted dreadful. And for 15 days, we were like, no gluten whatsoever, okay? And within about 6 days, Brian, my face completely cleared up. Completely, as if...
So it was the gluten.
So we found out that I had this severe gluten sensitivity. And so I, put 2 to 2 together. I quickly realized, wow, there is such an important link between what we put into our bodies, what we consume in terms of food or whatever, and the way it makes us look and feel.
Yeah.
And so I realized I became forensic about this whole subject matter. And I was like forensically reviewing product labels and ingredient lists to make sure it didn't contain gluten. And in those days, they didn't make it easy by just saying gluten-free, like putting a little loguito on it and saying gluten-free. So you had to like sit there for 3 hours in the grocery store and look through everything. And I realized, Brian, it's not just a bowl of pasta or a loaf of bread that contains gluten. It's so much more. It is beverages, it's salad dressings, it's even the vitamins we take, thinking that they are making us healthy and keeping us safe. They're actually making us sick. And so I'm a marathon runner. I'm training right now for my 6th full marathon as we speak. And so I have to supplement hard. Okay, I can't just get everything I need from what I eat. It's not possible. And so I have to supplement. And I realized, wow, these supplements contain gluten. And it's just because no one's ever said, make it stop. Okay, so I set out and I started researching, kind of like paused the whole Amazon FBA, but I also started realizing I'm going to figure out how to do a vitamin supplement that I can sell on Amazon FBA. So I go through that whole process. I'm, the investigate, the research and development, working with biochemists and putting together the right formulas and seeing what works and seeing, they would send me the formulas. I would try them, make sure I didn't break out. I didn't have any adverse reactions. And then I started quoting it with manufacturers in the US who could make the formulas into vitamin supplements. And they would all ask me, but why are you doing this? Why are you switching out this one for this one? I'm going, because it's gluten-free. Because it's gluten-free, it's cleaner. Okay, so we really were, again, to use your word, the pioneers in being third-party tested gluten-free in a time when it wasn't even a conversation yet. So I started Forte Naturals in 2015 is when we launched officially. 2015. I actually began the research and development a year earlier in 2014. And we launched in 2015. And I actually only launched on Amazon FBA with one product, which was a zinc 50 milligram supplement. And we did everything very differently. Again, mind you, this was my side hustle, Brian. Okay, I was still doing my real estate, going to the parque, closing deals, with the kids and everything. And that was good. But I had this little side hustle, which was my Amazon FBA project. Nobody knew about it. My parents didn't even know. Nobody knew. And I was just like, because I also kind of had the imposter syndrome for like a minute. I've never let imposter syndrome really slow me down because I probably wouldn't have done any of the things I've done today if I let that slow me down. But for a minute, I did have imposter syndrome where I was like, they're going to come back because my parents are doctors is the other thing. And I know this was going to be a territory where they were going to be like, why and how do you figure that this, like, you're qualified to do this, right? And I mean, again, I hire the biggest labs and biochemists. Like, it's not like me figuring it out. So anyways, so what happened is I kept doing the real estate on the side. My Forte Naturals, my vitamin supplements on Amazon FBA, were selling like maybe $74 organically per day. And this was like amazing when I had like $74 a day in sales. This is me doing nothing.
Of course.
Nothing to generate it. And this is just like, I could refresh my app
and you
on
weren't
my
doing
iPhone.
Like advertisements online?
No, I wasn't even doing PPC. In those days, I wasn't doing PPC because remember, this is the second generation of FBAers. So there was such little competition.
Of course.
Everything was an organic sale. They had PPC, pay per click was in beta in those days for Amazon. Now it's like you pay to play to be on Amazon. You can't even imagine it any other way. And so, my sales were just like, I think there was like 2 pages of zinc vitamins, in total. Now I think they have like 200,000 pages in their catalog for the zinc vitamin keywords. It's unbelievable how it's grown. So we were, making our little sales here and there. And then obviously that grew little by little, and I didn't take any money out of the company. If I made, a whole, $3,000 per year or something, I would just reinvest it and roll out a new product. And I was just having fun with it, but it was like very slow. Okay. And I was perfectly fine with that growth. Then by 2020, so COVID, all of a sudden one day, so I've been out for over 5 years at that point, by 2020.
And you were making it was sustaining itself.
Oh,
I don't want to say, and
I was
maybe
not a millionaire from this by any means.
And it was just, you know, it wasn't going broke.
It wasn't going broke. It totally paid for itself, and then a little bit more. It was completely sustainable, always sustainable. But I mean, I was moving at a snail's pace, and I was perfectly fine with it. It was like, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I'm a marathon runner. I'm okay with delayed gratification. That's kind of like what my thing. So then COVID comes along, and I never watched TV. After being on TV for a million years, I have one TV in my house, and I never turn it on, never on TV. And so, and now plus these days we're all on our phones anyways. And if we need news, somebody will tell us, or we'll find out about it another way. So all of a sudden I come in from my morning run and I refresh my Amazon FBA app, and I'm looking, now normally I'm doing like less than $100 in sales. Okay. And that's like a good day, like a wow day. Okay. Cause that's where I was in those days. Right. I would go like a week without really thinking about my Amazon FBA and just kind of like not even think about it. It was such a side hustle. So anyways, I refreshed my app after running that day, and I'm like, weird, this is like $2,000 in sales.
A day?
This is like not even 7:30 in the morning.
It's a glitch.
And I'm thinking it's a glitch. I'm thinking there's
messed
something
up.
wrong. They added way too many zeros in my favor. Well, and I just didn't even look at it. So then I go on, I'm like, doing my thing, getting the kids ready for school. I refreshed it again, and it's like $2,900. And I'm like, this is weird. So take the kids to school, come back.
This is 2020.
This is 2020. This is like
middle of mayhem.
I'm going to tell you. This is the end of January. Okay, the end of January 2020. And so then I drop the kids off. It's like 8:30 in the morning. I come back, and I'm like, let me get on my desktop and see what's going on, because this is my iPhone app. Maybe there's a problem. Who knows? Because it's definitely not right. And I get on, and I look, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like $3,300. And I'm going, what? Like, if I'm being hacked, why are they putting money into my account, Brian? Like,
they're supposed to be taking it out.
Right? So I'm like, but this is not right. So I call my mom. My mom's in the States. I'm like, hi. I call her Mimi. I go, Mimi, what is going on? Just out of curiosity, what's going on in the world right now? Because my Amazon sales for my zinc vitamin supplement, my Forte Natural zinc vitamin supplement, is going through the roof. And she goes, well, if you would turn on the TV and watch the news once in a while. She's like always on my case for not like watching the news. I'm like, She goes, well, if you would turn on the news once in a while, you would see that there's this coronavirus, and it is a really big deal. And people are out buying vitamins, and everyone is on the news saying to stock up on vitamin D3, vitamin C, and zinc for immunity. And I was like, oh my gosh. And they are doing that. I'm like on the phone with her still, and I'm refreshing on my app, and I'm like, I'm at like, I don't know, almost $4,000 in sales, and it's not even 12 noon.
Wow.
Okay. I'm like, what is going on with this coronavirus? So I just watched it, and I'm like, well, this is going to be really interesting. I guess this is real. I guess I've not been hacked, and we'll see what's going on. So this continued, Brian, throughout COVID. It got to the point where I was doing $10,000 per day.
Wow.
On my top 3 immunity boosting supplements. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars per month on Amazon FBA, and I couldn't even believe it. So I started filming Amazon FBA tutorials to share my real results, okay, with other people, because I'm going, oh my gosh, like Amazon is where it's at. Everybody needs to know about Amazon. So you can even look back in my YouTube from, I guess, 2020, from COVID days, and you can see the videos, and I would share my real life, real time results. So we were doing huge volume. Now, of course, I didn't have enough in inventory to sustain that. So within a couple of days, I would go out of stock. In the very beginning, it was easy. I could quickly call up my manufacturer, go, hey, I know you haven't heard from me in a while, because usually I don't have this kind of demand, but I need to quadruple my order, and let's do another run. And so I was doing that, and then I would sell out of that really fast because the demand was only growing and growing. And then I would, double up on that. And then, we'd sell out of that because I didn't want to manufacture too much. Once I mean, in those days, I was still like money was coming in and that I needed for manufacturing. So, and we never knew when is it going to end.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we get into the point where now Panama's moving into lockdowns. Okay. So this is mid-March.
Yeah.
Okay. My family were really fortunate. We quickly, beelined out to our beach house in Santa Catalina, and we did our lockdowns out there for like a year and a half, basically, because Veracruz was like the last province to open up again. And so I sat there. Well, all of our other businesses, we have law firms completely closed. We have hotels, we have restaurants, everything was closed. We have brokerage firms for our real estate.
Closed.
Nobody was working, closed. We had huge planilla with over 100, lots of people, almost 200 people on them. We were paying. We had mortgages, a couple mortgages on our rental properties. We're paying the mortgages because we know that's not optional.
Yeah.
Even though there was a moratorium on rentals, nobody had to pay their rent. Yeah. So, and this is not just our story. This is everybody's story, outside of Panama, but mostly here in Panama because Panama was just so extreme with everything that happened. So obviously, we are relying on what Forte Naturals and my Amazon FBA business is doing because it is through the roof with sales. But then at the same time, we're nervous and we're thinking, when is it going to end? Well, months and months of this is going by and it's not ending. And it seems like it's only getting worse in terms of the lockdowns and the extensions and this and that and the cases. So sales sustained for quite a while throughout 2020. Then I used that money. I mean, obviously, we weren't going places. So it wasn't like, party, let's go travel and buy stuff. You couldn't leave your house. So I just reinvested all that money into growing the line. So then we grew to almost 20 products is what I expanded into. We redid our product labels. We rebuilt our website. I put all the money. I mean, I basically played all the planilla and all the mortgages on all of our rental properties that, we had. And then I was putting it all back into the business to grow the product line and just improve on it. And so then, Brian, it was like October of 2020. I get a phone call out of the blue one day, and it's from Whole Foods in the States. Whole Foods, the huge grocery store
now
chain.
Owned by Amazon.
Now owned by Amazon.
Well, it was owned by Amazon at that time, too.
Yeah, they had just bought it. Exactly. Yeah. And so Whole Foods buyer calls me and they say, hi, are you Forte Naturals? I'm like, yeah. And they go, this, so-and-so, I'm a buyer for Whole Foods for supplements. And we're holding a bottle of your Forte Natural supplements and we really like it. And we're interested in carrying it in Whole Foods. And I thought it was a prank call because to get into Whole Foods, that is like that's the Olympics. Okay. That is everyone's dream. Yeah. Okay. If you're a vitamin supplement to be in Whole Foods, that's the dream come true.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's your validation right there.
Is it. Okay. And it really is. And I mean, it's a huge, huge chain. They have 533 locations throughout all the states. They're in Canada and the UK, and they're still expanding. And so, normally to get into Whole Foods, I'll tell you what it takes because I had looked into it because I knew one day, but I was thinking like really truly, I was thinking like in 15 or 20 years from now, I'll try to get into Whole Foods. This is like being on TV and wanting to be on entertainment television. Okay. But like, I never tried to get to them. I just had heard it was so impossible. Basically other supplement brands had told me, they were like, well, the way it goes to get into Whole Foods is you have to hire a broker and they charge about $500,000, sometimes $700,000 just to make the introduction and no guarantees after that.
Wow.
So could you imagine shelling out $500,000 to maybe $700,000 just so somebody goes, here you go.
That's a big bet.
And yeah, no way, Jose. I'm not doing that. Never, ever, ever going to happen. And so, that it either happens that way or you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per year going to these expos, these health expos, like in Los Angeles and New York City or Vegas, and you just hope and pray that someone from Whole Foods will walk by and take interest and take one of your products and so on. So the fact that somebody from Whole Foods is calling me saying that they want my product, I think it's a prank call. Like, this shouldn't be happening. And plus, Whole Foods receives over 1,000 products just erroneously sent to them per year. I mean, it's it's very slim.
Yeah,
that this
it's a
kind of
needle
thing
in a
is-
haystack
it really
trying
is.
to get into it.
Exactly. So when they said, would you be interested in selling in Whole Foods? I was like, oh my gosh, absolutely. And yes, what do I need to do? And now this is the big leagues. They're not going to hold your hand. There is no Amazon FBA course of getting into Whole Foods out there. There's no video series. There's no information on YouTube. Trust me,
So you have
looked
to
for
put
it.
your big girl pants on and
Big girl pants real fast. And the amount of money it takes to go into retail in the world's largest market. I mean, the United States is the largest market
ever in the history of the world.
Exactly. So we're not
$23 trillion market.
exactly. And so here I am as a vitamin supplement brand, which is, I don't know how many $1 trillion a year in just, at all. And I'm going to be on the shelves next to the players that are, owned by Procter & Gamble,
Yeah.
owned by Nestle, and have hundreds of millions of dollars of advertising budgets backing them up. And I'm going to be the guy next to them. That's like taking, a little bush pony from the interior side of the road and taking him to the Kentucky Derby.
How did you get in? I mean, did you ever ask the guy, like, what made you call me? Because
I was too scared. I was like, why?
You never asked him?
No, I never was like, why do you want me? I'm not going to ask that. I was just kind of like,
Well,
I thought it was a prank call at first.
You simmering it at the time, but some of the way some of this goes is that probably somebody just ordered it.
That's
And
what I
then
think happened.
and they
Exactly.
came into them because people don't realize that when you do work, you really have to do work because you never know who's watching, guys. I've heard this story many times here. The girl from Undercover Boots, Mari Quintero, she did some stuff with DHL, and she was always obsessed with her product. And one time, a girl from Miami had a friend who was a VP in Universal, and from miracles of the world, this VP saw what her friend was watching, and she's like, oh my god, this girl is so cool, so hot, blah blah blah. Next thing you know, she's doing a Emily in Paris with Universal line and everything. So you never know who's watching. So probably somebody just grabbed the bottle and said, hey man, this is good stuff, took it to worked in Whole Foods, like, man, we should have this here. That's validation right there. The first order that comes in, because you need to have all your stuff in order. You need to have things, your I's need to be dotted and your T's need to be crossed. And when the first PO, the purchase order comes, it's not $1,000 purchase order. So they need to fulfill. And then you come into play now with your with the cash that you're managing as well, because that cash that's coming in and out is going to be, because Whole Foods doesn't pay you cash, they charge cash though. So they need to have that credit, need to have distribution and everything. How did you handle that?
Oh, right. So this is exactly the challenge. So none of my previous experience working with my now 5-year-old at the time vitamin supplement brand had prepared me for what going into retail was going to be like. And again, this was like going to the Olympics. So basically, by the time that Whole Foods said, okay, you're interested, we want you to submit all of your products, I ended up submitting 16 to them. They did a 9-month-long review on all of our raw materials, our ingredients. Whole Foods is the only retailer that will forensically review every single product, not just brand, but actual product before they approve it to go on their shelves. And that's because they have a list of 1,000 banned ingredients that they will not allow in any of their foods or supplements in their stores. No other retailer does that type of review process. Other ones are like, yeah, sure, it makes money, or you work for us, you're going in. So if you find a product that is on the shelves in Whole Foods, rest assured it has been through a forensic audit. It's been through the ringer in order to get there. So out of 16 products, we ended up, they decided that 11 worked for them.
Okay.
Not because they weren't clean, but it just worked with what their needs were at the time. And so we launched in 33 stores in the Southeast with 11 products. Now, let me just answer your
Southeast
question.
is Florida, Georgia.
Exactly. So Southeast US. So they said we're going to launch there first. This is like 2021. Okay, we're launching. But let me just back up because there was more before that. So we're back to around October, November of 2020. We're still like barely coming out of lockdowns. We lived in Santa Catalina in Veraguas for a year and a half. So during that whole COVID phase. And so when this Whole Foods opportunity came to me, I didn't have liquidity. People are living in my apartments for almost a year without paying me rent. I'm paying their, the mortgage. Like nothing was working. Our law firms are still barely open. It was just like bad. It was really bad. It was the worst timing for this. I had reinvested all the money into, just keeping all of that afloat, but also ramping up our line and redoing our website and everything. So I was not prepared, shall you say, to make the investment required to go into Whole Foods. So, but it was kind of like a do or die. We need to know, yes, by basically end of the day tomorrow, are you going to do this or not? Brian, to come up with a lot of money, and I'm talking a lot of money, in basically a matter of hours is not easy. And so plus add the fact that you're on lockdown in the middle of nowhere, Veraguas, Santa Catalina, and you can't get to banks, and plus banks are not even going to lend for something that has no prior business history. Like I can't go to a bank and say, "Oh, can I have a line of credit because I'm going to be in Whole Foods?" They're going to be like, "No."
Here in Panama, no way.
No way.
Maybe in the States, if you take the PO and
but it's not. Yeah. It's still going to take a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
It's never going to.
Yeah, it's not overnight.
So, and again, I was in a position where I couldn't even, I had no liquidity. So, you know what I did, Brian? This is crazy, but
What'd you sell?
I couldn't even sell anything fast enough.
Well, nobody was buying anything.
Nobody's going to
buy.
buy. This is like happening on a Thursday, and I have to confirm by Friday at 5. Am I going with Whole Foods, or am I going to forever, think back and regret that I did not just jump when I had the opportunity? Because I knew this opportunity, getting to Whole Foods, is never going to come around again. And this is going to take us to the next level. Okay. And so I grabbed my American Express Centurion card and I maxed it out. I'm talking 6 figures in one day.
Wow.
And I mean, technically you can't max out a Centurion card, but you can get some crazy huge numbers on it. And I did that. And I actually want to say something about that. Maxing out your credit card, for those listening, is not business strategy at all. It is like, do not. This is pure desperate, big moves, big craziness. And I would never recommend anyone doing that. It is reckless. It's extremely risky.
Because there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Really wrong. This is should not be anyone's option for business ever. And so, but I did it. And and I figured it will buy me time to figure out the next step. And so what I did was, I had the money. Boom, had the money. And so I called up Whole Foods, or I replied to Whole Foods and said, yep, signing the document, scan, sent back, here's the funds, so on, so on, so on. And it was off to the races.
So they gave you the PO for the purchase of whatever amount of vitamins and they need it. You went to the manufacturer and you say, hey, here's the money. I need this. Front it. I need this ASAP.
Yes.
So they front it, they give it to you, and now it needs to sell through. That's the thing, because people want to get the products in the store thinking that it's going to sell by itself, and it does not work that way, especially in the United States. So now it has to sell through, because if it doesn't sell through, Whole Foods just says, Brianna, it was really nice meeting you. Just come pick your stuff up because nobody wants it. Okay? Bye-bye. And then you're stuck with the bill and the credit card debt, right? And that happens a lot, guys. So that's why you do not max out your credit cards. But you had a good, you were betting on yourself.
All in.
You were betting on yourself. That was all in. There was no coming back. So you get the product in the store. How do you make it sell through?
Okay, so that was the the trick. So just because it's in the store doesn't mean it just sells. I mean, there is a degree of organic sales that take place just because it's on the shelves and people walk by and go, "Ooh, this looks new," or "Ooh," and they'll grab it. But there's a lot of noise that you're competing with. Plus, you're competing with, again, brands that have
Procter, Nestle, and
exactly. I mean, brands that spend $100 million a year on TikTok, okay, and Instagram and Meta and all these things that are pushing out their message that people are gonna not see you and they're gonna go to them. So, yeah, it's really hard to stand out, and that's where it got really, really complicated for me because. Even though I was in the process and my idea was I'll max out this Amex card, but then we'll be going to the bank and this will give me time to get all my documents in order, and we'll get to the bank and we'll get it sorted out and we'll get that credit card taken care of. But it didn't happen as fast as I had hoped it would. So here I am, like swimming up to my eyeballs with this monthly, and mind you, an American Express credit card is not something you're supposed to carry a balance on at all. You're supposed to use it and pay it off in full at the end of the month, okay? Which is how I have always managed credit cards. I never use credit cards. We don't buy anything unless we actually have the money. If I use a credit card, it's paid off at the end of the day.
You get the miles.
Next day. You get the miles.
And you
exactly.
keep the 20% in your pocket.
Exactly. But you definitely don't hold these crazy, six-figure, balance on a Centurion. It was insanity, Brian. So anyways, long story short, it all worked out. I got it paid off. Now, we're in Whole Foods. Everything is amazing. But one of the challenges to go back is that, so you're on the shelves in Whole Foods, and if you don't go in there with your team and basically educate the Whole Foods their staff on your product and what sets you apart, there's no way that they know how to sell you. Okay. And when everyone else is sending their people in to say, this is who we are, this is what we do, you got to play that game too. Well, this is still just coming out of COVID. So this is like 2021. And they didn't even allow us to go into the stores. I mean, we could go in as shoppers, if you want to buy something, but we couldn't go in as the brand and even provide that information. So we just had to sit there and just hope it it would sell. And thankfully it was selling. So, but again, at a snail's pace in those days. Once, I think it was by 2022, Whole Foods finally allowed us to go back into the stores. And that's when I started my team there. And we would go into the stores, different places, and basically educate the staff and explain, do an apples to apples comparison of what differentiates us from other options here on this shelf, and show how clean our ingredients are versus everything else that's out there. And our price point is also, can't be matched. So, and people like knowing about where their vitamin supplements are coming from. They like the fact that we're 100% made in the US. They even like the fact, in the very beginning, I kind of felt like it was a disadvantage that we were family owned. And then I started realizing, no, you know what? I'm going to lean into that, and I'm going to make that our advantage. I'm going to come out at the forefront. And now I even put on the bottles, it says family owned. And, customers absolutely love that because they feel like you can trust family owned. When you see something that's is owned by something that ultimately Monsanto owns, or some of these other
Good
companies.
Luck.
Yeah, it's like why would I take a vitamin that's owned by
Good luck
Roundup?
if you get a rash.
Exactly. Hence the reason I was where I was in those TB days with the eczema. So, it is, again, it's kind of like you said earlier, Brian, it seems like it was just an overnight success. Like I just rolled out of bed one day and here I am, and it's all
you
going
landed
great.
on this
But
massive opportunity all the time, and it doesn't work that way. The thing about cash flow, guys, is that you need to have, because now imagine that you would have sold through all the inventory in Whole Foods in 1 month. Okay? You only have one credit card, so you need more cash. And that's the thing about banks here in Panama in comparison to maybe huge markets like Mexico or the United States. Because if you go to a bank in the States and you say, hey, Bank of America, I sold through my Amazon and I'm in Whole Foods now, and I need and let's say your first order was $1 million, and now you need another second order because Whole Foods called, the buyer guy goes, "Hey, Brianna, things are going pretty good. Can you send me another 100,000 bottles?" Yeah. Okay, so now you need to start looking for more money because you don't have any more money because you haven't got paid yet. So banks in the States usually front money with a PO. That doesn't happen here in Panama. And the thing about credit here, the people, Panamanians that are listening and Americans, is that you need some sort of guarantee most of the times here. So the economy will most likely be growing by the amount of risk that the banks are willing to take. The same in Mexico. If you want to go into Walmart in Mexico, in Guerrero or whatever, and then you go and it's just like, well, we need $10 million worth of merchandise, and you said like, well, I mean, if you're in Panama, you can't front that up if you don't have a financing on it. And that's the thing about huge markets like this, is that they're very cash flow intensive in the operation. You need to sell through, and you need to have that cycle pretty much just fine-tuned like a switch clock for it to work, because you don't need to make a lot of bad decisions to go broke, Brianna. Just one will just take you to the cleaners.
Exactly. You're exactly right, Brian. It's this game is velocity of money. It is that cycle between in and out, and how fast, how short can you make the space, the distance between what comes in, what goes out. And that's the velocity of money. And that is the name of this game. Once you can time that and you can get it perfect and keep it there, the ship's sailing smoothly. But if there's any little disruption to that velocity of money, you can be down.
Cash flow gets hit, and then interest starts hitting you bad. Then you're running out of inventory, and then people start looking you funny at the wherever you're selling, and she looks like she's not a very good spot, so we're just gonna maybe twist her elbow a little bit so she can come a couple nickels down on the price. And that's the name of the game, guys. When you go into the sometimes people are just excited here in Panama when they go into supermarkets, and then they realize, hey, listen, you need to maybe rearrange your prayers at night. So because going into supermarkets is very cash flow intensive, and if you do not have cash flow, you have no business going into the supermarket, because I don't know how much the credit in a place like Whole Foods may be, but in Panama it's definitely like 60 days with luck. So that's my recommendation to people here. Thank you for coming, Brianna. Thank you for telling us your story, and I hope a lot of people that are watching get to see, because they probably seen you on TV a lot, and now you're doing this because they don't know that you are doing this. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of romantic novels on the FBA thing, and it's not what it used to be at all. Now it's just like a butcher shop there, and it's just like mayhem. You have to put a lot of money into it. It's not like the days before, but I don't want to say, because it's not luck. You were at the right place at the time, at the right time, because you put yourself there. You put yourself there when you were doing the magazine, when you were doing the stuff. Like, who would think of doing a magazine in Panama in English? Who does that? There's nobody. People don't even speak English a lot here. So, but there's a lot of, petite group of people. But it takes 10 years to see overnight success. A lot of the gringos say that all the time. Thank you for coming, Brianna. And follow Brianna on her Instagram and on Forte Naturals. You can even purchase. A lot of people here in Panama love to buy in Amazon, so they can give this a try, because clean supplements definitely make a difference in your life. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Brian.